Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians. They make recycling leftover paint easy with convenient locations like your local paint store. And Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter and reducing waste. 1, you buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, you use up what's left. And 3, recycle the rest. And you can do that by visiting paintcare.org/3 simple rules to learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you. There's less than a month until Election Day, and aside from the many candidates to consider, we also have a handful of ballot initiatives that could affect everything from how all of Oregon votes to whether we should automatically get $1,600 back every year from our state tax return. So today on CityCast Portland, KBOO News Director Althea Billings is breaking down a few of these state and local measures to help us all make a little more sense of what'll be on the ballot this November. It's Tuesday, October 8th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Okay, so of all the measures people are talking about right now, the one making the most headlines is Measure 118 because people are just like, a free $1,600 every year, gimme. And if this does go into effect, it would start in 2025. Could you break down like how that would actually work?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because now it's $1,600. When it was first filed, it was $750 for every Oregonian. But basically, the way that they would fund this is by changing how we tax corporations in Oregon. So it would create a 3% tax on corporations' total sales in Oregon, and it's aimed at big businesses. So when they have sales of over $25 million. And then taking that money and redistributing it to every resident. And that includes if you're not someone who pays taxes. So if you have 3 kids, you're getting $1,600 for each one of them. And it can either come out as a tax credit or as an actual check that you would get in the mail from the government. And, they've been doing the math on this. So it's about 2,000 companies or so that operate in Oregon that would be paying this tax. And, thinking about it in terms of universal basic income, that's been something that people are definitely interested in.
Because this is basically it.
Kind of, yeah.
And the way Oregon tends to work is that these progressive groups from outside of the state tend to launch stuff here to see if it'll float elsewhere. And I wonder if this is one of them.
That it is one of those. I mean, the petitioner who put this all together is an Oregon guy, but a lot of the funding to make it happen did come from outside, particularly California, testing things in our little laboratory of democracy.
I love that California didn't do it to themselves. They're just like, let's see what Oregon does.
They're like, this might be too tough down here. Let's see if you guys will buy it. But I mean, like universal basic income programs where they've been studied have been pretty successful, especially in reducing poverty and stuff. I mean, even locally, the Multnomah Mothers Trust was in operation until this summer and was pretty successful in its goals as well. But, there's been a lot of pushback on Measure 118.
Well, I've read some of the, boo 118, and it's always like, this is going to crush small business. And I was like, I don't think small business owners are pocketing $25 million a year. Like, that's not a small business. But I do hear the governor is against this. And she's basically saying like businesses in general are going to take a hit and people aren't going to want to, make a business here in Oregon. But I'm curious, like 3% doesn't sound like a lot. What was our like business tax before? Because I'm assuming they did pay taxes, right?
Yeah, they do. It's that this is a different type of tax. It's a gross receipts tax. And what's weird about that, and I agreed with you. It's like, if you're not making $25 million, like, I don't want to hear it. How could this possibly apply to you? But, there's sort of this comparison against a sales tax, which famously in Oregon, we hate that. We don't want that here. But on a sales tax, right, they add, however much percent at the point of sale of like a retail item. Say you're buying a beer, they put the tax when you buy the beer. With a gross receipts tax, every time there's a transaction between businesses, so it's like whoever grew the hops then sent it to the distiller. If those are different companies, the tax is placed on that. And then if you buy bottles at the distillery for the beer, then you would pay a tax on that. There's all of these things where they call it tax pyramiding, where it actually builds up and builds up and builds up. And so there's this concern that, it really slims down the margins for small businesses, especially Oregon small businesses. It incentivizes people to go out of state as well, because that tax is going to get passed on to consumers. So stuff that's produced here becomes a lot more expensive than going out of state. And in some ways, it could even favor large businesses, vertically integrated ones where it's like, oh, we own the farm and the packaging and the company that drives all our stuff around. They don't have to pay that tax. So there's this sort of like perverse incentive structure, which is maybe not what people think of when they think of, but tax policy is so confusing as well. Yeah.
I'm already confused. I'm like, wait, how? Because you said small businesses, and I'm like, I still don't understand how small businesses will be affected.
Yeah.
Are you just saying that somehow they're going to also be paying more for things? Is that why?
Yeah, because it would apply to buying raw materials, machinery, equipment, energy, advertising, any of these things.
So you're saying, if you're a business, anything that you spend for your business is going to get taxed?
If it is from these types of companies, basically, these type of transactions.
That seems really weird.
Yeah. Especially this pyramiding that we're talking about, tax pyramiding, it's expected to hit groceries and retail pretty hard because their margins are much smaller. So that is the stuff that, if you had $1,600, you might look forward to spending it on. And we would see as well, the Oregon Legislative Revenue Office estimates inflation would go up 1.3% if this goes into law.
Wow. I wonder who's right.
I do find it interesting that across the aisle, Republicans and Democrats in the state legislature don't like it. The Oregon Center for Public Policy and Tax Fairness for Oregon also oppose it. One of the tax fairness called it a hot mess.
Wow.
Everybody in the legislature is like, I'm trying to answer my constituents' questions about this, and I'm confused. Anytime I get more information about this, I'm more confused about how it would work. And, there's a lot of this that if it does pass, that would probably have to be hashed out in the legislature to not crater corporate taxes in our entire structure. And that's another one of the worries, right, is not just that it might have a bad impact on small businesses, which are not the target of who we think should be paying this necessarily. And it's not even, not even to say that corporations shouldn't pay more taxes. They probably should. But that this would also impact the general fund, which is where we pay for a lot of the stuff that the state does, including schools. And so this would really change that calculus as well.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because I wasn't really sure about what was happening with this. So I wasn't either for or against, but this now is feeling a little Measure 110-y. You know what I'm talking about? Where everyone's like, this sounds like a cool idea, but then when you break things down, you're like, what about this? What about that? And I feel like as a society, Oregon,
yeah,
I'm just saying we should really maybe just stop voting with our hearts. It's boring. It's so boring. I get it. It's boring to vote that way. But you got,
right. Well, I think that we have the heart, but the implementation and anticipating the impact is something that we maybe need to weigh a little more heavily. And a year and a half ago, I met the chief petitioner of this before any of the petition was circulating or anything. And I know that part of his strategy was really trying to keep this under wraps, because anytime you're going to talk about corporate taxes, corporations are going to get loud. That's what kind of happened to what was it? The tenants one? The anti-eviction one. The right to representation in eviction court. There we go.
Yeah.
That would have been funded by a corporate tax. And that kind of got squashed partially based on that. So I know that part of the strategy for this was to let's just get it in front of voters and let's not make a big splash about it. But there might be a version of this that works that doesn't have everybody and their mother who knows anything about taxes saying,
this is terrible. This is a terrible
please
idea.
don't do this. I like the idea. I also agree that working families need help. Let's just not do it like this.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
I just know that someone listening who's super pro for it is just like, no, these are all the reasons. I want to hear all the reasons pro for it. But right now, you're not hearing a lot of pro.
Outside of their campaign, you're not hearing a ton of pro. No.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, should we be able to impeach our governor and other key elected state officials? This episode of CityCast Portland is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all know October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us, we feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to, like at work and social settings, around our family. But therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself. People find it helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, but you can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/CityCast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CityCast.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten, to remember all the food. For example, I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. They learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. That means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Well, let's move on to Measure 115, which would give our state legislature the power to impeach the governor, which I thought was odd because I always thought we had that. Like, that's not... Do you know? Like, I'm like, well, yeah, of course they should have the power. I mean, yeah.
We know about impeaching. What do you mean we can't do that here?
I know, exactly. Is anyone against this aside from the governor?
No, I don't even think the governor's against it. I don't think she's come out to say anything about it. But yeah, actually, it turns out Oregon is the only state in the nation. Usually we like to say Oregon's the only state in the nation that's doing X, Y, or Z. We're the only one that's not having our state legislature impeach our public officials. So This one, Measure 115, made it as onto the ballot as a referral from the legislature as opposed to an initiative petition. So this was the state legislature's idea. They're like, hey, do you guys think it's a good idea? And so it would give them the ability with like the same functions as the federal government to impeach the governor, the secretary of state, the attorney general, the treasurer, and the Bureau of Labor and Industries commissioner if they want to.
Gotcha.
They would have to have reasons. But I thought it was so strange that we're the only ones that haven't had that. But we do have the recall, which that goes to like a popular vote, though. And usually it takes too long to get it going before public pressure on somebody just has them resign.
Right. And so basically this is for just elected officials. It's not like they can impeach anyone willy-nilly. It's like an elected official, right?
The statewide elected officials. Yeah. And there was some crabbing about how some other states you have the ability to impeach judges, I guess. And so maybe Oregon wanted that too. But, you know, I think it is okay with what we've been talking about. Baby steps, you know?
Yeah.
We
should be able to impeach judges. Sorry, Althea, I cut you off.
You want to impeach a judge?
I just feel like anyone should feel that, like, I can lose my job.
Yeah.
And not enough people who are in governing feel that. That's all.
I mean, as evidenced by, you know, I think the scandal that inspired this, with Secretary of State Shemia Fagan resigning after, Sophie Peel at Willamette Week reporting all about her taking a consulting gig with this sort of embattled cannabis firm after doing this whole audit of how the OLCC handles cannabis.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's some shady business that was going on there.
Right. Okay, so another measure we're looking at is Measure 117, which would have our entire state adopt ranked choice voting, which is something that our city just did. And basically, it's ranking your top 6 candidates rather than just voting for one. If you forgot what ranked choice voting is.
I feel like people don't know what it is yet. They can't forget.
But basically, we're just trying to expand that statewide, which would include both state and federal positions. So technically, you could vote for like 6 presidential candidates, is what I'm hearing, in a ranked choice manner.
Yeah. Finally, Mickey Mouse is going to get his due.
Oh, Donald Duck.
Donald Duck.
Yeah. Well, do you think it'll pass? Because, I mean, it passed here in Portland, and we have the largest population,
Yeah.
So I'm curious if we're all just going to be gung-ho about it, or if, like, that's where we become slightly more conservative.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll have to see, right? Because even before Portland and Multnomah County started adopting it, Benton County was the first in our state to implement ranked choice voting. I think last election was their first time doing it, and they seem to like it. There's state pro-democracy groups as well, like the League of Women Voters, who are supporting it. And I think ranked choice voting has a pretty strong pitch, especially for folks who feel disillusioned with the way that our first past the post voting system works. It's like, I don't want to have to pick the lesser of two evils, but I also don't want to feel like I'm throwing my vote away on somebody that I feel really passionate about. But I guess if you look nationally, in Alaska, there's been some conservative pushback on their ranked choice voting because it spit out a Democrat instead of a moderate Republican.
Wait, so Alaskans were like, wait, I was just joking, not that guy. Then don't put their name in. Come on.
And it goes back to Sarah Palin, which is the funny thing about it.
What do you mean it goes back to Sarah Palin? No, and I want to hear this. Sorry, you just threw in, I want to know what happened.
I don't know it so well that I could get deeply into it, but I do know that there were 3 main candidates running for their seat in the House of Reps. And one of them was Sarah Palin, one of them was a moderate Republican, and one of them was Mary Peltola, I want to say is her name. And because some people, the way that they ranked, like Sarah Palin and the moderate Republican ended up sort of taking each other's votes and not amounting to more than what the Democrat ended up getting. And that's how you get the first Democrat and the first Indigenous Alaska Native in the Oregon or in the U.S. House of Reps.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for that. Don't live there, but that sounds awesome. But you know what's so funny is what you just stated is what a lot of people are worried about in ranked choice, even though we had someone from that committee come through and they're like, that's not going to happen. If you don't get enough votes, it's just not going to happen. But I'm always just worried with like, well, what if all of our votes just cancel out and then we're just like, who the fuck is that guy?
Whoa, such an interesting thought experiment. If I rank the 6 people 1 through 6, but then you rank them in the opposite order, who wins? Is it both of our third choice? I think it's supposed to be both of our third choice.
Yeah, I don't know. But they're a third choice for a reason. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, ranked choice voting, it's attractive to people. I think, if it doesn't pass this time, if people don't feel like they've gotten a feel for it yet, I think that there's probably a decent shot in the next election as well if it doesn't. Because the ranked choice voting people in Oregon, they've been at it a long time. This is not new for them.
Yeah. And even though I'm like rustling up a lot of dust about it, I still am for ranked choice voting. I voted for it. I'm excited to take part of it. But there is always that little part of me where it's just like, this is a terrible mistake.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, part of the issue in Alaska was that people didn't fill out their ballot all the way.
So that's what happened.
Yeah.
You got to fill out your ballot. Okay.
You need to fully embrace the system. Filling out more than one candidate is a good idea, because then if your first candidate doesn't get, 50% plus one or whatever, then it actually does get transferred to somebody that you like almost as much.
Gotcha. I hope everyone's listening right now.
Pay attention to that part.
Pay attention to what she just said, Portland. All right. So the last measure you wanted to talk about is actually one that's super hyper local, meaning it's only going to affect one specific district. And we're talking about the Park Rose School District in Northeast. They're voting for what now?
Their first teacher's levy. So it's measure 26254. And Park Rose is a pretty small school district within Portland. There's, I believe, just 6 schools. And, oftentimes it's getting overlooked. We got a Portland Public Schools. What do you mean there's another small school district in city limits? And, because of that, they've never had a school levy like this.
Wait, pause.
Pause.
Does that mean that every Portland Public School levy has not affected Park, like they're not getting any money?
They have not benefited from those, no.
Oh, see, this is important.
I think it is important.
So what exactly is this levy? Like what does it bring? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I think a little bit of, context, which we kind of know, but maybe we don't think about a lot. Our state and funding the schools, there's some problems with that. We don't have enough funding for the schools. You're not seeing the schools say, hey, take this money away. It's too much, So specifically in Park Rose right now, they're looking at a $3 million budget shortfall this year, which would mean cutting 26 teachers, 18 days of class, and also, of course, like beefing up class sizes to make up for all of that.
Yeah.
So it's a property tax levy, right, which is how we always fund schools. So it would bring in about $3.6 million this coming year, and it would really stabilize the funding for the school district over the next 5 years. And so, you're not cutting your PE class or your art class or things like that for the school district in this area. I also, not to go too deep on taxes again.
Oh my, Althea wants to marry taxes.
I literally don't.
Loves taxes.
Please don't ask me to explain what a TIF district is. I'll cry. But the property tax levy would be $1.25 per $1,000 of assessed property value. Blah, 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 right? But in the school district, the average home will probably pay between $12 and $30 a month. But compared that to the Portland Public Schools levy, which is about $45 a month for the average homeowner. And of course, Portland Public Schools is huge. But this is something that Park Rose hasn't had and would stabilize them. So, the teachers are excited about it, both for the stability for the kids and also for like not losing their jobs. That seems cool.
Yeah. I mean, more money for schools, like always, 100%. I still think that they need to find other ways of funding. It shouldn't always just, you know what I mean? People, it's not just, childless Claudia getting annoyed that she has to pay taxes. I'm not going to lie, there's a little bit of that. But it's a lot of it is just like, think about what that means. It means that like poorer neighborhoods have less money because there's probably less homeowners in that area. It just doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense. I feel like this should be on a state level and they should figure this out.
I agree with you. Also, to go back to, not to spend so much time on Measure 118 again, but the kicker. It's related to all of it. Everything in Oregon goes back to the damn kicker. I personally am anti-kicker. I don't know that that's the most popular position. With 118, they're also like, well, it would conflict with the kicker. You don't want that, do you?
Yeah.
They're going to take the kicker away.
Take the kicker and give it to the schools. Jeez Louise,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not an original thought. Hey, I don't know if you've thought about this, y'all, but what if?
Hey, guys, I have a brand new thought. Are you ready? Children are the future. Did you hear it?
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. No, this is actually really exciting for Park Rose School District, even though I'm not 100% behind how school districts are funded or public schools.
Yeah.
I still think the fact that it kind of like hit me, the fact that I pay so much into this program and it doesn't go to these districts that, I mean, I'm sorry, but Park Rose is not a well-off neighborhood, that's where more money should be going.
Well, and another thing interesting, they were very clear about this, is that it doesn't go to district administration. It would go directly to classrooms, which I think is another kind of like interesting component of it. Not that you probably have a huge administration for like 6 schools, but that's also part of the conversation, is like going right to classrooms, right to the teachers, right to the buildings where everybody is.
Great. And I also just want to highlight and underline, in case you listen like I do, at podcast. This would not be a thing that anybody else would vote on or pay for unless you are in the Park Rose School District. So don't, you know what I mean? Like,
Don't have a cow, man.
so don't have a cow, man. All right. This is just for Park Rose. Cool. Well, Althea, thank you for hanging out with us and going through some of these measures. I mean, these aren't all of them. How many others are there?
There's a lot.
Like 20?
You make sure you turn over your ballot a couple times. Make sure you get them all.
Yeah. And also, like, again, write more than one candidate when you're doing ranked choice. Come on, people.
And don't rank any of the ones you don't like. You know? Don't rank them. Rank the ones that you do like.
All right. God, I feel like we're going to say this every episode. Just, you know what I mean?
You gotta counter the anti-voting thing.
I know. And they're like, and that's how Donald Duck became Portland's new mayor.
Well, what about his driving record?
Yeah.
Don't put him behind the wheel.
He's got anger issues.
Yeah, the road rage. Donald Duck specifically.
So stupid.
We can cut all that.
We're going to lead in with that. All right. Well, thank you, Althea.
Thanks for having me.
Also, just a friendly reminder that the last day to register to vote in order to participate in this November 5th election is October 15th. So if you haven't done so already, go register to vote. I would also double check if you recently moved. Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.